Distinguished delegates, thank you very much for the invitation to join you virtually today at this workshop. My name is Yuko Shibashi, and I'll be sharing some of the emerging OECD perspectives on AI applied to environmental policy. Just to start with a little bit of context, environmental policy is often discussed in terms of stronger standards, more ambitious targets, and faster transitions. And these are definitely very important. But better environmental outcomes also rely on effective implementations. There is a need to promote compliance, monitor compliance, and as needed, enforce these standards and requirements. In this context, artificial intelligence, AI, subsuming a spectrum of fields, can help strengthen all of these three functions. But as I will come to later, it is not entirely immune to both existing and new risks, and there is therefore a need for effective safeguards and governance. As a starting point, I think AI should not be viewed in isolation. It should instead be viewed in the context of broader digital transformation. Environmental policy today already depends on a spectrum of digital technologies, which offer the promise to improve efficiency and targeting of policies, and improve design and impact of policies, and also expand stakeholder engagement opportunities. These are the findings of the earlier OECD work focusing on digital technologies in the context of environmental policy. Just to provide a few illustrative examples from the earlier work, congestion charges and charges in ultra-low emission zone, for instance, in London, is an example of variable pricing enabled by technologies. Cameras set up there have an automatic number plate recognition system, reading the number plate as drivers enter, drive, and leave the zone. And compliance is enforced and facilitated through automatic payment system. Digital technologies are also being used to influence consumer behavior and to enhance the implementation of policies. An example is a waste fee according to the amount of food waste produced, known as pay-as-you-throw. In this picture is an example implemented in Seoul. The increasing use of radio frequency identification bins, of which there are 27,000 in Seoul, that track waste more precisely alongside the implementation of this fee has been helping to tackle food waste. In this context, the OECD has recently taken stock of how governments are already using AI in this 2025 report on governing with artificial intelligence. The report identifies 200 government AI use cases across 11 core functions. And more than half, 57%, of government's use cases are to do with supporting automated, streamlined, or tailored processes and services. And there are many benefits associated with governing with AI. However, the report also emphasizes that the AI adoption does entail risks. And in this context, I think it would be remiss not to mention the environmental risks that can vary to do with energy, water usage, and hardware requirements. And governments also face implementation challenges, and these include the lack of impact measurement frameworks that are robust enough to be able to demonstrate the returns on investment of AI projects and deployment, and gaps in skills and expertise. Another very important factor is that it is often difficult to access, share, and manage high-quality data that are needed to support effective deployment of AI solutions. However, there are many benefits that exist for AI use in government, and these can be both internal and external, and OECD work summarizes this in these four categories. Internally, in government, it can improve the efficiency through automating, streamlining, and tailoring processes. And it can also improve integrity, as it can help enhance accountability, compliance, risk management, and enable fraud detection. And externally, it can also improve and enhance effectiveness through enabling better policy design, decision-making, targeting, tailoring, and strategic forecasting as well. And finally, and last but not least, it can also help making policymaking more responsive, unlocking opportunities for external stakeholders and user engagement for better policies. To realize fully these potential, however, the OECD work has emphasized the need for a comprehensive approach to develop trustworthy AI in government. And this comes down to three key components. First is enablers, such as governance, capabilities, and collaborations and partnerships. And there's also a need for guardrails, such as ethical frameworks and standards, the laws and regulations around it, an enforcement mechanism, so that the AI deployment is trustworthy and responsible in terms of the use. And finally, it also emphasizes the need for deepening engagement with key actors and stakeholders in implementing these solutions and to tackle challenges that arise with its deployment. It is particularly important and relevant for environmental policy, which has become broader in scope and increasingly complex, as shown in this illustrative example, comparing the number of environmental policy targets on the horizontal axis and the policy instruments. In this case, it is showing environmental policy implemented in Portugal in 1976 on the top half, and on the bottom it shows the environmental policy in 2018. As you can see, the shade demonstrates the expansion of policy. And existing research in this context has suggested that environmental legislations are becoming more complex linguistically, longer also, and more interconnected, that is to say, legal provisions are embedded. And the rise in complexity of environmental policy is for a good reason and is necessary. It reflects the complex nature of challenges being addressed. For instance, the environmental issues affecting air, water, and soil quality are intricately linked and require coordinated policy action across sectors and levels of government. However, this can also create challenges for both businesses and for policymakers. For businesses, administrative requirements related to monitoring and reporting, for instance, can be significant. Meeting these obligations might be particularly challenging and demanding for small and medium-sized enterprises. Policymakers also do face increasing demands as regulatory frameworks become more extensive and complex. The resources and the capacity for implementation and enforcement can grow as well. And when these demands exceed available capacity, the effectiveness of policies can also risk being weakened. And this is important because economic burdens of policies and environmental policy stringency based on an indicator developed based on specific criteria for different market, non-market and information instruments are not necessarily correlated, as you can see in this diagram. It means that there may be a prospect for reducing the burdens without compromising rigor and ambition of environmental policy. In this context, AI can play a role in reducing the burdens and supporting more effective implementation. By processing and generating text at scale, generative AI, in particular large language models, offer the promise to streamline the processes. And this is why we have recently begun exploring these tools and what they can do to reduce burdens of environmental policies. Rather than starting with the technologies, we are looking at the tasks that firms and regulators find burdensome, such as licensing, reporting, and permitting. For businesses, generative AI can help, for instance, translate complex policies and regulations into tailored guidance, supporting them to understand the requirements and complete procedures and access relevant support. For the regulators, GenAI can strengthen compliance monitoring by by summarizing inspection histories and drafting routine documents. And by doing so, more resources can be allocated to prioritize attention where the risks are the greatest. It can also play a role in improving regulatory design through better use of data. For instance, if legislations are provided in machine executable formats to streamline regulatory delivery. The opportunity is considerable because, as with many regulatory domains, much of environmental monitoring and enforcement entails managing significant amount of data and information. And the use of AI and generative AI is not hypothetical, with examples emerging in domain-specific models being developed, incorporating regulators' new data and repository of information to deploy these solutions. Relatedly, AI might also aid business formalization. Globally, informal workers make up nearly 60% of the workforce, and informality affects productivity, job quality, and social protection. But as you would be familiar, it is also relevant from an environmental perspective because activities outside of the formal systems are hard to monitor. By making procedures of compliance easier to understand, AI solutions might help lower the barriers and the cost of formality, supplementing broader structural measures, including institutional reforms and enhanced social protection. I look forward to being able to share more about the insights emerging from this work on the future occasions. I would like to conclude my very brief intervention with 3 key takeaways, with the hope that it can serve as a starting point for the discussion that follows. Firstly, as with any deployment of digital technology, there is a need to start with a problem at hand and not with the technology. That is to say, we need to be asking the question, what problem do we need to solve? And then to think about how can AI help? And the potential of AI can be harnessed to make compliance with environmental policy and formalization potentially less burdensome, both for the regulated and the regulators through regulatory technology and supervisory technology. And evidence on task-based analysis can help identify the hotspots and opportunities where our AI can enhance and augment tasks. And the risks, including the environmental risks associated, should not be overlooked, and appropriate safeguards and careful consideration of how the AI solutions are deployed is needed. AI can help close the environmental policy implementation gap, not by replacing the existing mechanisms or institutions, but by making them more effective, more efficient, and also more accountable. I have 2 questions to kick off the panel discussion. I would like to ask, where do you see the greatest opportunity for AI in environmental compliance? And speaking of implementation, what are some of the critical enabling conditions that are needed to realize the full potential of AI? Thank you very much.